Hello, my name is Mikkel, and this evening I'll be discussing my research project that was undertaken this semester. For this project, two interrelated questions acted as a basis for rigorous sociological investigation. How do intersectional queer men, ages 21 to 29, use online dating applications to understand masculinity and obtain social capital? How can the ideologies of hegemonic masculinity and neoliberalism manifest on these platforms to disadvantage lower-class queer men? With this research topic, I sought to examine the implications of power at the micro level of social interaction, and critically consider how macro systems of dominion overlap to constrain people in complex ways. Put simply, an exploration of power relations between same-sex attracted men. In particular, how dominant masculine constructs attain legitimation in queer social spaces. I felt that the presence of hegemonic masculinity on gay dating sites can present a set of challenges for queer men with subordinate masculinities, limiting intergroup participation. Indeed, this is important as persons with marginalized sexualities can rely on dating applications to locate a community. Thus, if the acquisition of social capital is hindered, it can disadvantage individuals. Having a minimal social network and being oppressed within a marginalized social group can instigate feelings of isolation, invisibility, and alienation. Consequently, intersectional queer men are disempowered in their masculinities. As such, social justice was integral to the study. The subjective experiences of those located at the periphery of the social imaginary were collected, their insights being highly valuable. Throughout my degree, I've taken classes that have addressed theoretical discourses pertaining to hegemonic masculinity, intersectionality, and neoliberalism. Indeed, sex in the media and men masculinity in society provided the conceptual scaffolding for these research interests. I am interested in these topics for numerous reasons. Both hegemonic masculinity theory and intersectionality emphasize the complexities of gendered power dynamics. Within an intersectional framework, there is the capacity to engage in a critical reading of power, oppression, and difference. When I initially encountered this theory, I felt a strong sense of internal understanding. I often questioned why life chances were vastly different for individuals within the same social groups, and this perspective granted an explanation. For instance, how an upper-class gay man can have access to educational and economic resources, and thus be equipped to handle homophobia. Yet, a lower-class gay man may be vulnerable, forced to work in environments where discrimination is active. Whilst my research did not address this concern specifically, it demonstrated how the intersection of class and sexuality can influence understandings of masculinity. I employ qualitative methodology in a semi-structured interview method. Qualitative methodology was considered appropriate for this research as it often gives the marginalized a voice and is used to explore the hidden aspects of social life. Two participants were recruited, both same-sex attracted men, working in low-paid employment and aged in their mid-20s. There were difficulties recruiting participants, with responses to my invitation being quite low. In turn, the study was adapted slightly to include a broader age range and men who have used, but no longer use, gay dating sites. Ample data was gathered from the insights articulated by both participants. 11 questions were devised prior and were open-ended in their structure so as to stimulate conversation. Ultimately, I was interested in collecting stories. Thus, probing questions were used throughout. I asked participants to reflect upon their experiences being same-sex attracted, what they felt was meant by being a man and masculine, how they interacted with men on dating sites, the reasons they used such sites, and so on. Once the interviews were completed and transcribed, responses were coded multiple times until patterns and themes emerged across the dataset. I found this to be the most challenging aspect in the research process. I underestimated how time-consuming coding would be, and it took significant mental energy to see similarities and differences in responses. This research uncovered the existence of hegemonic masculine ideology on gay dating platforms and in contemporary gay culture at large. More specifically, how hegemonic masculinity structures interpersonal relations between same-sex attracted men, polices behavior and gender expression, and disempowers non-normative masculinities. Indeed, this ideology is normalized at a micro level, concealed behind neoliberal discourses. To clarify, two themes arose in the data: assimilating to hegemonic masculine standards, and feeling alienated from a dominant gay culture. Both participants often expressed peer pressure to conform to heteronormative masculine constructs, and frequently encountered rejection and dismissal for failing to assimilate. These findings are crucial as they dispute the inclusive theoretical model proposed by Eric Anderson in Sociological Discourses vis-à-vis men and masculinities. By recording the experiences of disempowered masculinities, one can adequately assess the implications of gendered power in wider society. This is necessary. An identification of these complex social problems can instigate solutions and, ultimately, bring positive social changes. I found the research process to be challenging, but overall enjoyable and empowering. On reflection, I've realised that qualitative research is time-consuming, but invigorating. Being able to hear the narratives of others, establish rapport with people, and engage in diverse conversations was a meaningful experience. Therefore, I'll continue to use qualitative methodology for future projects. That being said, time will need to be managed more effectively in order to gather required data. I believe this was an issue in my research. While sufficient data was collected, locating participants, transcribing interviews, and coding responses were stressful endeavours. Had more time been designated to these stages in the research process, I believe my analysis would have been more detailed and rigorous, capturing rich information and connecting my findings to theoretical perspectives in nuanced ways.